Good evening, everybody. It's 8 o'clock Eastern, and we'll wait, just see when Dean gets on, and we'll get started.
Hey, everybody.
Oh, there he is.
We'll give everyone the customary 2-minute grace period here. All right, it's 8:02. We have 44 people on an August evening, so I think we'll get started. Just going to pull up the agenda. We'll have a few additions made to it, of course. First, I just want to mention the Wauwatosa Curling Club and the flooding they had. I'd encourage everyone who can support them in some way to reach out to them. You can see information about it on their Facebook page. It looks like most of their downstairs basement club room has been pretty severely damaged, but we're hopeful that maybe the ice shed area and some other places where they've made significant improvements in recent years fared better than that. So that's something I want to start with. I'm just looking as people get added here. Obviously, agenda item number 2 will be the most discussed. So maybe while others are joining, I'll jump into the other items first. The members assembly updates on that. Curl Vegas still has room in the Bonspiel, so that would be if you can plan a trip, you could attend the members assembly in the Bonspiel. We're going to run classes and courses concurrently. Number of good ones around coaching. There's coaching. There's one for 5U curlers, trying to advance post 5U and just improve. So I would encourage you to visit the site and the page we have outlining some of those details. We'll also have a Hall of Fame induction out in Las Vegas for Rich Lepping. And Friday night, we'll kick off the weekend with our members meeting. So please, if you can make it, we'd be thrilled to have you. If you have trouble with finding information you need, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or Lauren Rich. Booking
hey, Dean,
clinics.
can I?
Yeah, absolutely, Lauren, jump in.
Just a real quick reminder about the members meeting. A reminder email was sent to presidents this morning who have not yet opted in to vote. In order for a club to vote at the members meeting, the president needs to opt into voting before August 20th. So if you are a president and you haven't opted in, please do so. If you don't know if your president has, please reach out and send them a quick reminder. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren, for that. Yes, club presidents can carry the votes of their club unless individuals opt out. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Lauren. there's also, you know, as we mentioned, just you can book clinics and courses online. So I'd encourage everybody to do that. And yeah, do reach out if you're not a club president. Maybe just reach out to your club president and ensure that they saw that email or those emails. The one-day curler membership, we use it as a test with at Chaska. So we're grateful to Chaska for letting us test that there. And it went pretty well. So Columbia had an event there and we had all their people sign the waivers and pay the $5, the digital waivers. So more on that, but we're going to be rolling it out as the season gets going. And we think it's something a lot of clubs we hope will consider doing. Certainly takes out the waiver process, gets you some of that, gets some participant accident insurance, and gets curling information that we can use to market our sport. Somebody might not be on mute. I don't know if I can mute everyone, but I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Quick update on the Regions Cup. We're still reviewing how we're going to award points in the Regions Cup throughout the season. One of the things we want to do is find a formula that makes it so by the last regional event of the year, which would be the mixed fours in most years, there is a chance for every region to still win. So that takes a little bit of math. If you know anything about the FedEx Cup with golf, you'll know they didn't get it right early. So if there are any math algorithm folks on this call, feel free to reach out to us as we develop that point system. We want to make it so every game matters throughout the season. So that's underway. We are getting a new equipment trailer and we'll do some fundraising around that. Our current trailer needs to be replaced. So that's what we use to carry, you know, all our ice making materials, stones, everything else to national championships like men's and women's, wherever we're using our championships. You've probably seen it at some junior events. We will use it when we can, when it makes sense economically, and we can do that. But the trailer was in rough shape, so we are buying a new for us used trailer that we think will be a good deal, and we're offering look for an email about how you can get your name on that trailer. We're going to invite donors to do that. So be great to have support there. Junior qualifier updates. We're meeting with the junior qualifier Spiel conveners to bring more uniformity across all the events this year. We think we made progress last year, but we have room to improve, and we're also grateful for the junior Spiel conveners and want to make their job as easy as possible. So we'll be meeting with them, and the plan is to have consistent formats and operations, whether it's everything from practice times to how we determine playoffs, rankings across all those events. Continental Championship. Some of you, I think maybe we discussed this on the last call, but US Steel came on as the title sponsor, so that was exciting. We've added more sponsors as of late. We are also going to have Pan-Continental merchandise available, we think, by September 1st. I don't know if you've seen the logo for it, but it's pretty cool. And we're excited to offer that merchandise as well. There'll be some pre-orders, I believe, on that. But some good stuff coming on that front. And then the last is a request again from Lauren. If we would love to have more dedicated ice facility and business plans. If there are clubs out there that have more of those, we'd like to have those so we can share them with clubs that are on that journey. Was there anything else to add on that, Lauren, before I move on?
Yeah, just that we're looking to update our, I guess, offerings of business plans and fundraising resources and plans that we have in our house. So construction plans, anything that any clubs that have recently transitioned from arena to DI, or any DI clubs that have recently made substantial renovations or moved into a new facility and expanded. Anything that you guys can share would be appreciated.
Yeah, one of the things there is a lot of the materials we have are pre-COVID, to be honest. And then of course there was a bit of a lull in activity. So some of the things, if there are any more recent, even if things haven't become, even if you haven't been able to actually build something, but you've been investigating, the more we can share with the membership, the better. And we have a good place to do that now. If you are looking for stuff, it's in our house. There's club operations, Lauren, and correct me if I get this wrong, but club operations, and then there's also, or club management, and then there's also an arena club section where you find those materials. They're under groups in our house. Best thing to do when you go to our house is look at the groups first and then find the information you want in there. So any questions on any of that, of those points? I'll turn on the chat too, just so I can see if people put things in there. So with that, as most of you probably saw, we put out a release this morning related to the executive order and the USOPC requiring all NGBs to be compliant when it comes to transgender participation in women's sports. I know there will be lots. I know this is deeply personal for many people. Brett and I have been on calls with people. It's deeply personal. We have nothing but empathy during these calls. The reality is we don't have really any room to maneuver here. It's if people say, well, it's time for USA Curling to step up and lead on this, I have to say I don't think that would really change what's happening around this issue. So that's really why us and essentially every other NGB that's part of the USOPC is moving to adopt these measures. So with that, I can stop for a moment and just, I want to give people a chance to talk themselves. I will say a couple things quickly, just that, I think the USOPC, and I'm certainly not privy to all the conversations at the USOPC level, but unlike the NCAA that adopted this policy immediately after the executive order, the USOPC has spent the last several months trying to find room within. And I guess in the end, those efforts weren't particularly successful. So that's really the reality. And then the other piece to that is the USOPC, with this current administration and Congress, has very real concerns about congressional takeover of their organization. So they are in a difficult situation as well. So I don't know about anybody in this call, but I would not want Congress controlling our Olympic movement right now or ever. But that's sort of some of the things they're facing. So with that, I'll throw it open to the group for your thoughts, unless Brett has something he'd like to add, because I know he's on if he wants to add something before that.
Yeah, just to join Dean saying that this is also personal to me. And I know that probably rings hollow, but it is. And, many of my friends are going to be affected, and I'm not thrilled about that. But I really think it's a choice of, is there a USA Curling or is there not? And I want to make sure that we protect the arena championship athletes and the club championship athletes, and as well as obviously those that are striving for Olympic excellence. So I'll just open it up, as Dean said.
Eric, your hand is up.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess one of my biggest questions is, as you know, I am a coordinator for one of the half-dozen-ish Pride Spiels in the country, with the Drag Effect here, Windy City. I believe we're up to 7, possibly 8 Pride Spiels now. And so for our clubs, a lot of us obviously are running events that are designed and intended to be as absolutely inclusive to the LGBTQ plus community as possible. And when you look at a policy like this, as I was telling some people from my club earlier, curling is not like other bigger sports. We're not like swimming where, you know, if you have a child who is a transgender athlete who maybe be a decent swimmer at the high school level, but then still has to get out of the county, the region, the state, the country, maybe go worlds, maybe be big enough to get on the Olympic stage. Literally, someone can join a Learn to Curl on Friday, hop into a league on Monday, have a friend on Wednesday say, hey, we're going to club nationals and we could just use a warm body because we're desperate just to throw a punch as best we can. Do you want to go? And then suddenly be in a play down for a national championship at the regional level on a week later on that following Friday. This directly impacts all of us at the club level. So my question is, how am I, who claims to run an incredibly inclusive event, supposed to look all of the other members of my club in the face and all of the other people that have come to my event for 3 years, possibly going on 4 in February, to say, yeah, Windy City is super inclusive, unless you're a trans woman, in which case your options are incredibly limited to the 7 weekends out of the year we allow you to be yourself exactly as you are. What language do I use? And I'm sorry if I sound heated, but as you acknowledged, I hope I and granted a little bit of grace. This is a very heated issue for me.
Fully understand that, Eric. I will just start by saying we have neither interest nor intent to manage any club operations. And I don't think that's going to be required, and it's not something we're going to do. It is going to be required of our championship events, especially when they have gender specific categories. But we are not, I mean, we are fully supportive of bonspiels like yours, and we are fully supportive of league play that welcomes everyone, and we are fully supportive of Learn to Curls that welcome everyone. We believe that is a function of our sport. In fact, we have a document about the value of curling clubs in a community and their ability to bring people together. So yes, it does go against all of that in our championships. Now, we think, like I said, we don't think, well, we have no desire nor intent nor plan or anything to, get into, how you run a bonspiel or how a club runs its league. No, I don't see that happening. And I think the only way it would ever become an issue is if, some politician in Congress wanted to make some event an issue. And right now, I think we're low enough on the radar that wouldn't happen. But yeah, I mean, totally get it. One of the reasons we're looking at another open championship is so we can have some meaningful way for all curlers to compete, right? And so we are looking at that. I can't say we'd be able to pull it off this year, but it's definitely something we want to put in place. What we can't do, according to the mandate, is we can't change an existing championship. So for instance, 5 and under nationals, because it was an open event, is fine, but we can't go and change an event to be open.
If I may follow up with that, I don't want to completely take over the conversation because I'm sure a lot of other people have questions, but I don't know if this conversation, I know it was had, I don't know how far it got or if it went anywhere or if it's still continuing, but I know that there at one point was a conversation amongst all of us that are Pride Spiel coordinators of possibly talking, I believe even with you, of the idea of a U.S. Pride National Championship in the same way that Canada has a Gay Pride Curling Championship. How does this policy affect that? Would it affect that? Like if we suddenly throw this big national championship for rainbow curlers together, how do we in good faith say, oh, but not one of the letters in the acronym?
Well, I would say you make it an open event. Which it would be. And we're fully supportive of it. I think when Brett first started as chair, he started down that path with some people, and there was some pushback on people who have done a lot of the work already on Pride Spiels, and we didn't want it to come off as if we were trying to get into that into that and take some responsibility away. So we'd be happy to work with you on a national pride championship. And I think the way around it would be make it an open event that has no gender categories.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. I think it was Mimi and then Brian.
Yes, thank you. As a host of one of your national championships for U18s, what does enforcement look like?
It's a great question, Mimi, and I will only say that we are not alone among NGBs asking that same question, and we don't have a really good answer at this point. One of the reasons we didn't come out and say, here's our new policy, and I think some people thought we were maybe dragging our feet, but one of the reasons was that, you know, this board needs time to think things through. We need some more clarity around issues like that. And I will tell you that came up in the NGB council call yesterday, came up on the call that's a group of NGB CEOs and the law firm Brian Cave. And we don't have a good answer. So, you know, again, not something we want to be in the business of doing. So we're trying to figure out how that will work. Let me know if you want to follow up on that, Mimi. Otherwise, I'll go to Brian.
Not at the moment. Just, you know, you tend to think about all of the ways that could potentially be enforced, and not sure how that would play out, and wouldn't necessarily, yeah, just thinking about kind of my children and how that enforcement might be, and it was just sort of relatively deeply uncomfortable to even think about. So
yeah,
which I know you guys have talked about.
Uncomfortable for me as well, and
Yeah.
the whole organization. So
Yeah.
I hope we can provide some clarity around that pretty quickly, but you know, that's also, you know, I think when this executive order was signed, there wasn't much clarity about it either. Brian.
So you mentioned that it's an executive order, which is currently being challenged in the courts.
Mhm.
Is the implementation of this from a policy perspective to modify or rescind our own inclusivity policy in the basically in the effect that if the executive order is deemed unconstitutional, thrown out, rescinded by a future administration, what have you, would the USA curling policy be restored back to what is currently or was previously the case? I guess I'm interested in kind of how that'll all work. And then again, like in terms of club level, we had been in Seattle, we had been pointing to USA Curling's transgender non-binary participation policy as our policy. Do you, if you modify that, are we then as clubs going to have to write our own policies? You know, I'm trying to get to the sort of that.
Yeah, I understand
how you're handling that. You know, yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, so it's a great question, Brian. I will say, so when this first happened, you know, if you notice, the USOPC slid it into their athlete safety policy. Now, us and other NGBs have said we don't want it in the athlete safety policy. So it won't be in there because the athlete, if it was in there, for instance, we are required to regulate the clubs that are following safe sport examples. So we don't want it in athlete safety. We want it pretty limited to these competitions. And then to your other question about is there a chance that yeah, okay, let's fast forward 3.5 years and there's a new administration and a new culture in Washington. I think we'd be a part of that change, right? So I don't think that, you know, I don't think this is, I mean, all our policies can be revised. So I think that there would be, you know, appetite for that if it reflects the curling community.
Do you intend to, I guess, but to the point, do you intend to rescind the current participation policy so that it is aligned with USOPC's policy, or will it be modified in a way that kind of makes it clearer? I guess that's what I'm interested. Are you rescinding the current policy?
Well, the current policy would make us non-compliant, right? So either we have to look at how there's two ways we could go, and I'll give Brett an opportunity here to talk about this too, but there are two ways we can go. Is one, we can draft a new policy that replaces that. That's what some NGBs have done, or we can revise that one. But whatever we have as a policy will have to fall in line with what the expectation is. So what's happening right now is the administration asks the USOPC, I don't know if it's weekly or bi-weekly or monthly, but they're asking, saying, okay, how many NGBs have changed their policy to comply with this executive order? And that's, USOPC says they've been given some window there, but not a lot of time. So far, 5 have taken the step. USA Hockey is, most are doing what we're doing. What's our policy? Where do we put it in our policies and procedures? How do we limit its scope? So that's all underway right now. But I would say as a club, yeah, I mean, to me, and this, I don't mean this to sound facetious because it's a much different issue, but we play the no tick rule, but we certainly don't expect clubs to play that rule. So we want to support our member clubs and whatever you're doing to promote the game. That likely does, could put us at some risk, but I think we can do that. So we don't, like I said, we don't have any interest in dictating policy to member clubs.
Thank you, Dean.
Brett, I don't know, was there anything else to add there, or?
Brian, if I'm still on the board at a time when I can make a change, there'll be a race to get it back.
Olivia, I think, is next.
Thanks, Dean. Hi, everyone. Olivia Capello, she/her, from Potomac Curling Club here in Washington, D.C. Our club is, of course, deeply concerned about the EO writ large, as well as the scrutiny it's placing on sports organizations, but especially on youth athletes. And we would really encourage the USAC board to consider as much as possible erring not on the side of congressional safety, but in protecting our young athletes, especially, to the point that that Brian just made around rescinding USAC's policy versus modifying, if at all possible, we would encourage holding language as much as you can within any USAC policy to, I think, within an acceptable risk, push that boundary a little bit, because the EO is relatively clear, and I'm sure that USOPC is trying to put some guardrails on you. But as you said, we are an organization that flies a little bit under the radar. We are a different type of sport than so many of the sports that are under this heightened scrutiny, and I would just encourage holding that in mind. And that's,
Olivia,
that is a message
really,
from our board and from our DEIA committee, which have been very involved in the crafting of USAC's policies in the past.
Right.
Yeah, Olivia, I appreciate that. I'm going to give Dean a lot of credit here because I've been on the calls that Dean has had with the Olympic Committee, and he says he was, out of all of the NGBs in the country, Dean probably asks the most questions and says, well, what can we do this? Can we do that? Can we, modify it in such a way? And so Dean is really looking to find that, what are the boundaries and where, and how can we stretch them? And he gets very direct answers to his questions. As you said, the executive order is very clear, and in many of the meaningful ways that we are trying to get right up to the limit, Dean has asked those questions. Sometimes the USOPC has to go back and obviously interact with the White House and others to find the answers. But inevitably, they come back and say, yes to this, no to that. And I think Eric's point earlier about open championships are an area that we found we can grow in and we can develop in. There was even a question just yesterday about mixed events, that there may be some ability to push the boundary there. I'm not going to, please don't hold me to that, because it was more kind of like maybe they didn't seem to have a problem with mixed stuff. And so, but definitely in the open space, I think we have as much room to run as we want. And we're going to find out more about the mixed opportunities and see where we can push the boundaries there. It's, as I said, I really want to give Dean a lot of credit for asking the tough questions and trying to figure out how far we can go.
I will just to clarify a little bit, and I appreciate that, Brett, but on the mixed, one of the things that happens is other NGBs they basically call their open championships and open events mixed. So, whereas we have the mixed fours. And so I think we have to make sure when another NGB says it's mixed, it's not always the same as our mixed. But Olivia, to your point about youth sports, I mean, I have kids myself and I have the same concerns. I think there will be some pretty disheartening stuff around high school sports this fall. And I think that, I think the USOPC and NGBs are not the only organizations that will be under the microscope. And while it's encouraging to think, well, we could fly under the radar a little more than most here, if you Google USA Fencing and what they went through, it's not far-fetched to find us in a similar kind of situation. And that was not a pleasant experience for them. And they have come out with their own take on this executive order, and how they're going to comply. And they're probably going to get pushed a little more than other NGBs because they were caught up in it before. So, I'm not saying I want to be here hiding any of our values or anything like that, but yeah, we would like to not be noticed as much. But it's not hard to look. I mean, look, there are a lot of things that are difficult to predict right now, but it's not hard to see a headline that says quirky sport of curling defies, whatever congressman, whatever, says whatever. So honestly, I mean, and I realize some people might say, well, what does it matter if we're decertified? Well, there's a lot that happens if we're decertified. It's pretty much an end to our existence. The USOPC comes in and installs staff to oversee. That would be everything from men's, women's, mixed doubles, wheelchair, and juniors. Our sponsorship dollars evaporate. The TV coverage that we may not get this year on Peacock, but we're working towards, probably goes away, of our nationals. And our relationship with World Curling would end. World Curling would have to function with whoever is installed as the NGB. That affects certifications, education. USOPC would not have a whole ton of interest in, if they were running a curling NGB, would probably not have much interest in running a national championship that Peacock might want to carry. Our insurance opportunities would be impacted. Representation at all international world curling events would be determined probably not by curlers. So those are just some of the things. And, it's, if you look at the history of other NGBs who've been decertified, and what it does to their sport, it's not great. Eric, sorry, go ahead, Brett.
I'd actually go a little bit further to say that I think the administration would do other things to the entity that was decertified to prove a point, right?
Yeah.
Like, I really think that we would lose our nonprofit status, that there would be things put in, putting the organization in jeopardy of not being able to have a bank account. And I mean that seriously. Eric, before I get to you, Jake Lenz has raised his hand and lowered his hand and raised his hand and lowered his hand. And I want to make sure if Jake wanted to speak that he has an opportunity to do so.
Jake? Well, while Jake is collecting himself, let's go to Eric again.
Okay, so I'm here this meeting. Oh, Jake, are you there? Jake, do you want to go?
Matt's on. I think that's Matt and
Okay, so I am here tonight. Normally our president, Josh, is here from Windy City. He granted me permission to come here in his stead. And so as part of that and part of my talks with my fellow members, we at Windy City specifically, and I'm sure some of your clubs out there too, while this policy directly names and targets and affects trans female athletes in the sport of curling, there is a bigger picture here to consider as well, insofar as what does this policy do with USA curling standing in light of the WCF, which you mentioned, Dean? And I ask insofar as, like, we have a group of people that want to go to the senior men's national championship. Should, through the grace, they win, and now they're going to world senior men's. Does the WCF suddenly go, well, by the way, you came out of an event that doesn't follow our compliance because we do allow trans women to compete? I realize I used men as an example, but hypothetically, let's say I use senior women's. Does the WCF suddenly say, you ran an event that doesn't fall under our compliance, so now you, USA athletes, are no longer eligible? So, like, we get that you're following your government, but that doesn't follow us. What's the impact there, if at all? Because then that would put this in a much bigger picture for the United States in general, as opposed to just this one specific targeted marginalized group.
That has come up with NGBs. If you're international federation, your IF has less stringent rules. What will happen now? World Curling does not have our policy for elite level events. I mean, they have not been as inclusive as we are. And unfortunately, Eric, I would expect that the IOC is going to fall in line with this, and World Curling will fall in line with this. The new president of the IOC, Christy Coventry, has expressed her support for, I don't know if you'd call it support, but her interest in this. So I don't think we'll have a situation where our policy is at odds with the World Curling policy. I don't foresee that. And I'm just being, giving you my honest take on it. I think these things the World Curling policy for Olympic Games and World Championships was already far different than ours. That's why ours was carved out like it was. And I think, in all fairness to USOPC, I think they were trying to continue to allow NGBs to carve out that space, right? And then we're unsuccessful as far as we know at this point. But that's my best answer there, Eric. And it may not be the most satisfactory one, but I think that's where things will go.
Frustrating is the word I would use to kind of get the vibe that for a sport that claims to be the spirit of curling and super inclusive for everyone at the world level goes, oh, but not these people. That sucks, quite frankly.
Yeah, I understand that. Let's go to Jake, and then we'll come to Matt and Lauren there. I think you're on mute, Jake. That's usually the mistake I make. Oh, looks like you're off mute, but unless somebody else can hear Jake, I can't. It's Microsoft Teams. We'll tell you what, we'll come back to you, Jake. Promise. Or throw some in the chat if you're really struggling. Matt in Bowling Green. Hi, Matt.
Hey, Dean. Lauren Whitmer is here with me. We're sharing a computer today, so I'm gonna give her the chair and the floor here.
I got blue screen to death upstairs, so now I'm in the basement.
Okay.
Okay. So first of all, I just want to recognize what a crappy situation this is for everybody to be in. You know, I personally don't believe that any of this is coming from the hearts of people in leadership at USA Curling. And, you know, we all need to remember who we should be directing our anger and rage and frustration at, and that is the current administration. That being said, I do have some questions about this policy, and especially several of my questions have already been asked, but especially about how this new policy is going to be enforced. So things like, you know, how does USA Curling plan on verifying people's sex at conception, which is obviously a ridiculous request since that's not a thing that scientifically exists. Questions like, what if somebody's eligibility is challenged at an event? And are we going to suddenly be expecting the head official to do genital inspections? How are we going to be treating intersex people? Which, in case people aren't aware, it's like 1 to 2% of people, roughly the same percentage of people who are redheads. What happens if a club with a trans inclusive policy suddenly gets a safe sport challenge from someone who's upset, let's say, about a trans woman using a bathroom? So I'd like to just hear a little bit about what you all envision for in terms of implementation of this. And then I'll have a follow-up question.
Yeah, those are all great questions. I don't see, sorry, what was the very last one about the safe sport? Yeah, because I think we're distinctly keeping this from safe sport. If someone files a safe sport complaint, I would be shocked if safe sport took that on. I think they would not claim jurisdiction. If they didn't claim jurisdiction, it would come back to us, and I'm pretty confident about how our committee would rule on such a thing. So I'm not as concerned about that. I am very concerned about compliance, verification, all those things that, as someone who loves curling most of all, does not really, you know, it's not something I want to be working on in this job. Let's put it that way. So we need answers on that. I don't know what those answers will be yet. I do think there will be some guidance around how someone files a competition grievance. If someone says this person shouldn't have been competing in this category, we should have some guidance around that. That doesn't mean that, again, I would think it would come back to be a grievance discussion. So that's what I can offer on that. I mean, I've joked about this. Brett talks about me asking questions, but a lot of the questions, not just for me, but other NGBCOs that have been fielded by Steve Smith at Brian Cave, who I think is a really well-meaning lawyer. He often follows them with, well, that's a great question, because there isn't much clarity around it. There's also not much clarity around what will happen at the state level, right? Because various states have different laws, and this will surely be challenged, whether it's with us or some other NGB. But compliance, again, that's why we don't have a policy right now, and we just have the information we have that we're sharing.
So, who specifically is going to be involved in drafting the policy, and are there going to be opportunities for the broader membership to be involved with that?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, the previous policy was a result of a lot of collaboration. The only thing I will say is we don't have a lot of time to put some policy out there. So there will be board discussion. There will be discussion with the USOPC, further discussion with them as we try to find what room we have. And then, I hope that people know that this board is pretty committed to having, the best policy for the curling community that we can within the confines we're in.
Okay, and then I guess one last question for right now. Have you considered giving any I know that you're not dictating policy to clubs, which I really appreciate. But have you considered any effort toward encouraging clubs to not follow suit and adopt this? So, Bowling Green has a trans inclusive policy, but we also have club members who last year were fighting to get our pride flag taken down. And it was a big battle to keep it up. And our membership, the small contingent of our membership that showed up to the annual meeting, voted to not make our Curling is for Everyone committee a permanent committee, right? So like there are people who I'm very afraid are going to jump on this as an opportunity to roll back policies at clubs. And I guess I guess I'm wanting the best of all worlds, right? Where you're not dictating policy, but also telling people to not be jerks. And I don't know, do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I think in our release today, we said how we want our sport to be welcoming to all. So, I think that, I think what you're talking about at the club level is going to play out at the local government level. When it comes to high school sports, it's going to play out at the AAU level locally. So just as I would say that, if you're, on any issue, this or any other, if you really want to impact change, it is vital to work at all levels of government. And if one of those levels of government is your own club and you're passionate about it, then I would, do the work you can do there. But yeah, we're always going to say, that we want to be a welcoming sport. Not just say we are, and we know we have some areas to improve on overall diversity, but that is what we want to be.
I would encourage you and ask you please to then really emphasize that as much as you possibly can.
Sure.
Because you're being forced into a really crappy situation. So at least saying, that you're being forced and really emphasizing that this is not what any of you believe or support would, I think, go a long way.
Yeah, I can appreciate that, Lauren, and we will. And, I think, I think Brett will, I brought this to the board after the fencing issue and said, this will become an issue for us one way or another. Right. So, and that could have been what happened in fencing, where a competitor took a knee and all of a sudden fencing's thrust, their policy is thrust in the spotlight. And it's pretty clear the administration is going after big sports organizations first, right? Because they want to send out a message. So it's the NCAA, it's the USOPC, professional leagues, but it is going to high school sports this fall. We'll see a lot of different things play out. Olivia, I think you had your hand up, but so I'll go. If you still have a question, please go ahead.
I want to react to Jake's question.
Sure.
If I
Yeah. Go ahead.
And Jake, for the record, if my club were to ask me what to do, I would say don't change a thing. We I think there's 3 out of 20 some leagues that we have that are even gender specific. At Dean's Club, they have 0 gender specific leagues. They're all open. And I would say don't change a thing. But in terms of, future down the road, how do we ensure that, things don't change and we can't impose things? Well, I think it has to do with the governance model that we have, or even the relationship that clubs in USA Curling have. Is one, this isn't law, like it's not, Congress hasn't passed this like they did the Safe Sport law, where they can mandate down to the level. And so we only have a voluntary agreement to be with each other, right? As a club, as a national organization, as a region, if you belong to a region, you everything is voluntary, and that relationship can be severed at any time. we certainly hope that people don't sever it over this, because, you know, as Lauren just said, we're you know, in a really bad spot. And this hasn't been being driven by the board. And in fact, I can tell you, to a person, the board is absolutely dreading having to vote to change the policy. But it's because of that, there isn't a downstream relationship that we have with any club or any region where we have any modicum of control. And so I think that's how you make sure that it doesn't, that something later couldn't prevent us from saying, well, in order to be part of us, you know, you got to change a policy at your end. Does that make sense? Eric?
Yeah, I just want to follow up both on that question and the one Lauren asked. Sorry, my journalist hat went on. Just for clarification, to what Lauren was saying, like, and far be it from me, I'm not playing devil's advocate. I'm just asking the question. If you have someone in your club, or if a club has a member who is anti-trans, and suddenly says, hey, my club allowed a trans woman to play in the women's league, and they file a complaint with USA Curling, what does USA Curling do? Because I don't know if you answered that and that got lost in the question, but like, do anti-trans people now have recourse to go after their own club that they're unhappy with because they think the liberals are in charge?
No, I would say we do nothing, Eric. I mean,
Okay.
that is a club matter, just as, you know, there are clubs that have, you know, there are clubs when people probably resisted at some point, have resisted allowing women to play on the same night as men in a competitive league. So, but we, like I said, we're not going to be dictating those policies.
Okay, so like, just to clarify, like, no club is at risk of being kicked out of USA Curling because they are, as a club, choosing to continue to allow everyone to play as they are, trans women included.
No, I mean, we have no plans to do that.
Okay.
Believe me, we're trying to keep clubs. I will also say that we have a pretty shaky history of really enforcing clubs to do anything. So we don't see this as a time we would, but and again, just no interest. And I use the no tick rule, and I don't mean it to it sounds facetious, but it's a perfect example. When we said we were going to the no tick rule at our championships, a number of clubs said, well, does that mean we have to play that in our club? And we said, absolutely not. You play whatever format you want. So now, I will say that the caveat to that could be at a club where somebody, as Lauren notes, complains about it at the club level, and some eager politician wants to make this a wedge issue, then we could find ourselves in the middle of it. But again, we don't want to be dictating any policy to clubs. I mean, our policies around clubs that you know, obviously, you know, safe sport is one where, you know, I think all of us would agree that us, you know, pushing that to clubs, that hey, you have to have your board members safe sport certified and so forth. That makes sense, but that's the extent of it.
So in the same vein that Lauren is requesting that it would go a long way to have language in any sort of further release from USA Curling saying, we're not a fan of this, this is not our choosing, can I humbly request that you also include language that says we are strictly applying this to our championships and playdowns and in no way, shape, or form are encouraging or requiring clubs to comply? Because I think that would go a long way in helping those of us that are trying to continue to have inclusivity in this sport, to include all, to say, okay, look, even USA Curling says that doesn't apply to us if we don't want it to, so slow your roll.
Yeah.
So Eric,
sorry, just real quick, Brett, I'll just say the last line in our release today is a new policy limited in scope to qualifying events sanctioned by USA Curling and our national championships. So, we can continue to make that clear. But sorry, go ahead, Brett. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, I was going to put that fine point on it during your explanation, Dean, which is I believe that, you know, whatever policy gets adopted is going to apply to championship and relevant playdowns. Obviously, any open championships, it would, you know, an open championship is open. It's open to anybody. But it also would not apply to USA Curling activities like the officiating courses, any of our seminars that we hold, instructor clinics, coaching clinics, all of those things would, as far as can tell, would not be covered under the policy because they're not gender specific.
And anything outside of a competition is most definitely not covered, but I don't think we're in this alone either, right? I mean, you can look at what weightlifting put out. You can look at what fencing's put out. I mean, I think most NGBs are trying their best to find the daylight here, and want to be supportive. I see what Matt's saying.
Dean, Mimi has some questions about how this will be adopted by USA Curling in the chat.
Sure. In the chat. Or Mimi, do you want to throw them at me?
Yeah, sure. I was mainly wondering what the timeline is for policy development. Is the board going to approve this on their own, or is this a vote at the member assembly? Mainly because if it's a vote at the member assembly, we cast the votes for our membership. And typically what we will do is if there's anything kind of, I imagine this would be something that we want to communicate this very clearly to our members. Sure. And let them know how we are casting our vote. Should they want to kind of, give us, their feedback, but also, cast their vote individually, which I think they can do.
Yep.
Right.
So, yeah, they can. So, right. So we're hoping to have this policy in place by the end of the month. That's our plan. One of the things we're doing is to keep it in policies and procedures and out of bylaws, which I think is prudent. So policies and procedures are, drafted and approved by the board or revised by the board. They don't come up for a vote at the members' meeting. Bylaw revisions do come up for a vote at the members' meeting. Now, that doesn't mean that somebody couldn't vote a certain way. But the voting at the members' meeting will be related to bylaws. So this won't be the kind of thing that will be voted on at the members' meeting, the specific policy. And that might seem like we're trying to elude people here, but the reality is putting it in our bylaws makes it much more would make it a lot more far-reaching and a lot more challenging to change. So we'd like to keep it in policies. And I'm sure one of the things that's happening is, some of the larger NGBs that have in-house legal counsel or even outside counsel that they hire are working on things. There's going to be NGBs that will put things out with more resources than us, and we'll review those and see, what have they learned and what are they doing? So one of the reasons, and we've talked about this as a board, is that, we really didn't want to be the first to come out with anything, but at some point we can't be the last either. So we'd like to see some other things evolve and then draft our policy around that.
Well, and frankly, our season is going to start soon, and we have to. Yeah. Everyone needs to know what the rules are of eligibility, right? I mean, that's just fair. Sarah, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah. So Sarah from Charlotte Curling, I just want to know, because, we've had some really good questions and everything here, but I know that all of us in our clubs are going to have a lot of our members, once a lot of them, we get back in season and they read about all of this and they see all of this, they're going to have even more questions. So is USA Curling going to have a place where members or anyone can go and submit questions for you? And then is there a place where you would maybe post the answers to those questions? And since Dean, since apparently you asked some really great questions to other meetings and phone calls and everything that you've had, will you also kind of post some questions that were asked, but then answers that you received? So then not only, there's going to be more questions after this. So then that way we
Sure.
can also stay informed and see those answers and responses too. I think that would be great for members to see the questions you're asking as well. So then they see, hey, USA Curling really wants to, really try to, keep everything and show like, hey, we're asking these questions to show like, we support and really want to understand all the things.
Yeah, great point, Sarah. I would imagine we'll have a town hall at the start of the year where we'll have questions on this as well. But I also think that if people want to send questions to us, actually Lauren's just saying now that she can add a form to the bottom of the release that was posted on our site today. By the way, I'm using the word release. It wasn't like sent out to all media, by the way. It was really to inform the curling community. But yeah, we'll have a place for people to ask questions. And then, when we do this, we'll follow what others have done and what we would do anyways. And that's to have some FAQs that cover as much ground as we can. So totally understand there'll be lots of questions from members, from clubs. And I don't mean to say that to say that we don't have any courage here, but the harsh reality is that if we had stood up and said we're not going to follow this, I don't think it would change the momentum that's already doing that. I think there are other ways other actions all of us need to take if we want to change that momentum.
I want to respond to a question that Jennifer had in the chat. Would there be consequence for a region if there's an issue raised with the team that qualified for a national competition? I can't see us penalizing a region per se. Obviously, if a team is ineligible of competing, that team would be, would probably be deemed ineligible, and some other team would have to fill the spot. Hopefully, whatever compliance measures there are would allow the timing of that to allow the region to put another team in its place. But I mean, that's totally hypothetical, right? Because we don't even have a policy yet, and so we don't know exactly how to administer the policy until we have it. So
I just see Jonathan's point that Arena National, some regions have already had playdowns.
Of course.
Yeah, so that's but
that's why we wanted to try to get it. That's why Dean put the release out, so we can start getting information out. That's why we're taking questions, as many questions as you guys have to answer, so that we can tell you what we know. And then, as soon as we get a policy done, we'll get it out to everybody. And then we will start trying to answer those questions about what happens next.
I think Jeff's had his hand up for a while, so go ahead, Jeff.
Not too long, but thanks. So kind of a response to something Dean just said, and Brett, maybe a follow-up question to what you just said. My concern is sort of for the broader curling community and their awareness of this press release. I consider myself a relatively informed person. I'm on this club council. I'm in contact with a few other folks on this call through social media and things like that. I didn't know that this press release came out until midway through this meeting. And so my concern is for the rest of our membership who may not know what's happening or who might have thoughts on how we proceed from here. What's the plan going forward for how this is going to be communicated more broadly? Like, is an email going out to club presidents, to club council members, to any of those folks that can share that with, we have 300 something members of our organization. I might be one of maybe 3 or 4 who know this came out today. I'm not on the USA Curling website on a regular basis, at least not during the workday and stuff like that. So, and I don't say that in any accusing manner. I've been on national boards before, so I certainly understand, Brett and Dean, the position that you guys are in, trying to navigate really difficult, challenging things. So one, I appreciate what you're doing. But what's the next step in terms of how we communicate this with the rest of the curling community?
Well, you bring up a good point, Jeff, and we discussed today about whether we sent this out as a mass email. It will be in the next email I send out, when one of my in the house emails, which will happen pretty quickly. In terms of communicating it, I think it goes back to what we try to do with just about everything, is where, you know, we realize not everybody will see a social post, not everybody will see it on our site. We do like to put things on our site first, but we'll continue to make people aware of this. Lauren sends an email, a regular email to club leadership, and we have the in-the-house email that I'll send out. So we will continue to, and we're not going to not talk about it, I guess, because if we've learned anything these last few years at USA Curling, that's about the worst thing we can do. So as difficult as conversations might be, we're going to be communicating. I mean, I understand it. You know, it's August. There's probably, you know, we're talking, this group is, you know, we're among the diehards here, right? Taking an August evening to talk about curling, and we appreciate all of you. But I realize there's a lot of people who probably find my email too long and don't read it, or won't find out about it until they start curling in the fall. But we'll do our best to put it out there without, you know, quite frankly, you know, don't really want every media outlet picking up on what we're doing all the time, and put ourselves in the focus of somebody. So we'll move with the other NGBs, and we'll communicate to our community, and keep making sure that people know where we're at. And I would ask all of you to make sure that your club leadership, if you're not on a board and you're the representative, I'm going to guess that most of you already have done that, but make sure that your club leadership knows about this. Eric?
Hi, me again. I've been asking a lot of questions tonight in terms of different hats. It's how my brain works, from my rights field coordinator to member of my curling club, et cetera, et cetera. This one's from me. You talk about momentum. You say a lot of the NGBs are saying this is the way it's all moving. This is the way the sports are going because of the pressure.
No, wait, Eric, I didn't say all the NGBs are saying that. I'm saying just the political moment is that, and I'm not saying that's how everybody feels.
Okay.
I'm saying that just like the National Guard in DC, I mean, there's just things pushing, and I think that we have to have we can spend a lot of time, you know, criticizing USA Curling, and that's fine. We're happy to take criticism, but we can sort of, you know, combust ourselves. And I don't think that's going to change the national conversation. I think it's not going to have an impact on the national conversation that we might like it to have, but I just don't see that as happening.
Okay, apologies. I didn't mean to misrepresent.
No, that's fine.
And I truly don't mean this to be a criticism or an attack. It's more just an honest question. Is that if NGBs, because I know you said USA Curling is sort of just more or less, to characterize, oversimplify, go the way the wind is blowing. If a number of sports and other NGBs basically say, no, we're not doing this. We are going to push back. We are going to fight back. If the pendulum of pushback that, as you were encouraging us to try to actively take part in, does start to swing that way, does USA Curling join the fight?
Well, I think that's something we'd have to look at for sure. If there's I don't see that right now. I don't see that at the NCAA level. I don't see that at the high school sports level, unfortunately. So, you know, I think fencing took this on pretty well, and didn't, you know, they ended up in a pretty difficult situation. So I'm not sure what appetite there is among NGBs to do that. And also, frankly, the USOPC. I mean, the USOPC is in probably the worst spot of anybody, in that they're literally being asked to report back to the administration how many NGBs have adopted or are following this executive order. And if they don't have, you know, if they got to a point where they only had 20 NGBs following it, I'm pretty sure Congress and this administration would take over the USOPC. It's no, it wasn't surprising that the president was in LA for a news conference. I mean, it's just challenging all around. And I think for people who are, upset about this for very good reasons, I think there are other places, quite frankly, where our anger and ire is better placed. And I'm not saying that, we're just going to give in, but and these are such difficult times that you wonder, like, where do you draw the line? I get that. But on this one, I think we're going to need some other forces in play. We're going to need some states to step in. We're going to need some courts to step in, which, and we're going to need some local momentum, whether it's around high school sports or other things. And I guess that if that sounds like a cop-out, I apologize, but I just don't think that our organization alone can produce that kind of change.
And to be clear, I don't want to sound like I am directing any at you,
No,
because I know there are
totally
bigger
fine,
forces
Eric.
at play. I can throw this at. It's just, again, me speaking for me here at a time like this, when you just sort of can't help but feel a little lost.
Sure.
You tend to reach out to see who's reaching back. And I guess that's where that question was coming from. It's just, who's got our backs,
Yeah. It's a entirely fair question, and I wish I had a better answer for you at the moment.
Olivia?
Yeah, it should come as no surprise that the person coming to you from DC is a Politico. I actually work at a leading civil rights organization on their campaigns team. One of the groups that is pushing back most heavily on this administration. And I would really encourage the USAC board to question slightly this assumption that USAC is an organization. Moreover, the USAC membership and our member clubs aren't a venue for creating this change and pushing back on the bad actors that are out there, whether it's the administration or the state politicians that are imposing sports bans that are already up at the Supreme Court next term. And I think there is a really strong role for each of our clubs to play. And while I understand that USAC has struggled to pull people along in line, this is a really key time for USA to encourage clubs to be adopting policies and pushing back on the fascism that is encroaching into our everyday lives. And this is one of those places where it's encroaching.
Sure. I get that. And again, I know my answer on that's not particularly satisfying, but we do want to be an organization for everyone. That's why as soon as this happened, we started to talk about other championships we could create. But yeah, I mean, I wish I had better solutions that we do right now. I mean, yeah, I think there's a lot of things we can be pushing back on or should be pushing back on as a country. So Eric,
yeah, and I completely hear and respect that, Dean. And I think that that's the sentiment that is important to be hearing from leadership right now. That like this is a time that we need to band together as a community and push back a little bit, even as you're pushed into a very, very difficult position.
Yeah, and we can continue to. I mean, one of our marketing objectives during the Olympics to grow the sport was really not to say get out and try curling, but to really promote the value a curling club brings to a community, and that it brings people together from all kinds of walks of life who might never meet or spend time together. And we have that document out there, but I mean, I truly believe that's a value of curling. So we want to encourage that. but we're also having to navigate this situation. Not want to encourage it, we will continue to encourage that.
Well, Jeff, I'll just comment on your post. This is something that since Dean first brought this to the board, that I've felt in my heart, right? Like, curling is my escape, right? It's how in the wintertime it is my mental break, and in fact, it's a better mental break for me than anything I've found in the summertime. And so the fact that I have to be dealing with these difficult things in the thing that I love, that gives me a break from the world, is been really difficult for me to deal with personally. And I've had a lot of sleepless nights, and including a couple this week, as we've discussed this issue and tried to get questions answered. And so I absolutely feel for you, because it's what I'm feeling too.
I mean, the only other thing I'd say on that is I think our sport, I think, is particularly strong with community, but other sports have communities too, and they're dealing with the same things, right? Yeah. I think all sports are pretty good at creating communities, but I put ours at the top of the list, but other sports do it well too. I mean, that's one reason we all participate in sports, right? So, I think, I mean, USA Hockey is struggling with this because they had an inclusive policy. I do think at every meeting for the last 2 years, when this has been brought up as a looming thing, and then more recently when when this executive order brought it into harsh focus, there's more questions and answers around all of it, including the fact that, what's going to happen at the state level, local level. And it's, as some have pointed out, it's an executive order. It's, that among a number of executive orders that there's all kinds of people that don't feel great about. So yeah, I mean, when we started the club council, pretty hopeful that we'd be spending a lot of time talking about how we improve learn to curls and things like that. So it stinks that we're stuck doing this, but we wanted to give everybody the opportunity to talk at this. Hopefully you have some information you can go back to your club with. You're probably feeling like Brett and I do after some of these calls, where we're not really sure what information we're going back with, but trying to provide as much as we can, and we'll continue to do so. Any other questions? I always say I want to keep these meetings to an hour, but I was willing to say that this one could go long, and so if there are other questions, feel free. Matt.
Or Lauren in this particular case.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's Lauren. That's all right. I
just saw the name up top, so I thought it was.
Yeah,
Matt.
No, that's fine.
Go ahead, Lauren.
I'm pushing back against executive orders by changing name and pronouns. No, question about, so, a lot of my questions were about implementation. Clearly, you're not there yet. But in this quick turnaround, I just want to ask again, are you, I do not envy this position that the board and the leadership have, but will you be including other folks in the conversation and getting input? Because it also shouldn't all be on you, and trans folks should certainly be included in making sure that this is as least shitty as possible, given that it's going to be shitty regardless.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, whether it's one-on-one conversations or whether it's part of a larger group, I think the board and all of us at USA Curling are reaching out to people. I've had 2 conversations with trans athletes. We have another one scheduled on Friday. And we'll continue to listen to those folks and learn. I mean, it's I guess what's and as you're all hearing in this meeting is it's really hard to come up with something, as Lauren describes, it's not shitty. So it's either it's shitty or less shitty, right? And yeah, we really don't. The last thing I want to do is further have suddenly somehow put clubs in the crosshairs because of something we do. I definitely want to be cognizant of that. We all do. So it's not easy to navigate, that's for sure. But we will. It's not just going to be. I mean, I think any policy that happens will be. I mean, I already know a number of board members have spoken to people in their region and their clubs, and we'll continue to do that.
Okay, I just want to encourage you all to not be afraid to ask for feedback during the process. It sounds like you're
Sure.
not, but it shouldn't have to all be on you. And we have a lot of expertise in
Yeah.
the USA Curling membership, and we should be using it.
Agreed. Olivia.
Dean, what you just said brought up a question for me, which I think we've touched a little bit on this throughout the conversation, but if there is pushback against clubs that maintain their own trans inclusion policies, allow people to use the bathrooms and locker rooms that conform with their gender identity, even in states where the law is not great, has a bathroom ban, and come under scrutiny, will USCA provide support and stand with those clubs given this new paradigm?
Yeah, I mean, we're always going to be supportive of our clubs and how they operate and their right to operate, as they wish. So that won't change. I think my point was more that I'd really rather not put clubs in the situation we're in, quite frankly, and have some local politician decide that they want to make a point with the club, and that sounds awfully pragmatic, I realize, but unfortunately, there's a bit of pragmatism in all of this. There are 51, I think I said 51 national governing bodies. 5 have so far come out with policies. I would expect we'll see more about the same time as we do. And all are, fencing's a great example. I mean, they're a club-based sport trying to find their way through this and got caught up in it in a way that wasn't great.
And Dean, the 5 is it fencing, volleyball, boxing,
archery, boxing.
I can't remember what the 5th one is.
Yeah, I can't either. But I mean, boxing has the most stringent international federation rules too. So they were sort of and there's not a lot of recreational boxers.
Yeah,
as far as I know.
But I think you would see, if you looked at the different policies, and we're doing this, is to see the flavors, right? The how far or how stringent different national governing bodies are going, and also what the reaction is to those policies. That if a politician were to flag one and say, well, that's not good, we want to pay attention to that and make sure that we find the sweet spot as best we can.
Nice comment by Matt. Yeah, I mean, I think that
I think that's by Lauren again.
What's that?
I think that's a comment by Lauren.
Yes, sorry. I give him Matt a lot of credit, Lauren. I'm sorry. It's just his name keeps popping up. There he is back there though. He might be feeding you material for all I know. Yeah, I mean there's obviously a lot of things that are still to come on this, but I think there's not an NGB out there that isn't struggling with this, and even some you might some jumped on it earlier, I guess, but we're all struggling with it. And especially this compliance and verification issue comes up in every meeting, and we don't have anything good. I think what it will come back to some sort of grievance policy. I will also say that I asked directly of USOPC, about where this lives. And their answer was that the administration would like it to be in the athlete safety policy, but that all NGBs and the USOPC have resisted that, and that seems to be holding. So. Eric.
Hi, me again. Okay, so someone, as I was scrolling the chat, someone mentioned Bowling Green's inclusivity policy. I don't know. I've been reading a lot about, being ungovernable in the face of this administration. If hypothetically a club were to draft policy that deviates from USCA's and says, hey, we're going to remain steadfast in our trans inclusivity, and they put really great language in their club policy for their club to be so. If hypothetically another club were to come to you, Dean, and say, we would really like to stay trans inclusive, and that would require us to draft our own language instead of just deferring to what the USA Curling is offering, are you guys the kind of guys that be like, well, here's a club that you might want to parse it from? Or is this something that we should have to kind of be doing sort of underground on our own?
Well,
not to put you in a bad spot. I'm just asking.
Eric, I would say the policy that is in effect today would be a good model policy for clubs to adopt.
Okay.
That is on our website right now.
Okay. Just lift that.
I apologize. I think somebody raised this earlier. It might have actually been Eric, but will USCA keep that policy online for posterity? It seems like there's nothing in the letter of the EO or what USOPC is asking of you to do so, but I'm curious if USAC's attorneys have said otherwise.
No, I think we'll leave it. So one of the things we need to do is there's some other policies totally irrelevant to this conversation, that we have a quad audit with the USOPC that we needed to adopt different language or implement a policy that we didn't have. So we have some other policy changes. None of those, quite frankly, they're pretty semantic, but the USOPC. So we'll have some new ones. And then what I think the best practice here would be to have the other policies, the previous policies noted in the policies and procedures document. Before Brett and I started, what happened was all the policies and procedures remained, and then were trumped by the following policy. But what my concern with that is that it actually makes it seem like some of those policies might still be in place. So I think we need to move to, here's the existing policies with, the addenda about what policies were. I see no reason to run from that policy or to hide where we were. So.
Eric? Okay.
I don't know how to put my hand down once I've raised it, which is just indicative of me.
I can help you with that.
I was using Zoom for the first time in a while. I had to Google during the call how to raise my hand. It was embarrassing. All right. Right at 9:30. I would encourage all of you, feel free to, we've had emails, and feel free to keep sending them to us with thoughts or feedback. Happy to have those. Sometimes we may not answer them right away, and that's not often, it's pretty much always because we don't have a good answer on something at the moment, but they are all duly noted. All right, well, again, thanks to everybody for both your commitment to this group and your commitment to the sport, and your, your opinions and your beliefs. I appreciate all of them. We appreciate all of them. Thanks, everyone.